Hi, I'm going to discuss about 7 policies or 7 dangerous misconceptions against the nuclear energy or nuclear power. People think that we should not be using nuclear energy for greener sources of power. And the very first point that they say is nuclear power or nuclear technology is a dangerous technology. There is always a threat of meltdown. Now, if you look historically, there has been 3 or 4 major meltdowns of all the nuclear reactors that we have today. Roughly 1.5% of the nuclear reactor always have some problem of meltdown, but they're not serious. And of those, all the meltdowns that we have seen in the last 50, 60 years, the first one that comes to our mind is the Chernobyl accident in 1986. That meltdown caused how many deaths? 40 deaths. And even the worst estimate is like 4,000. The real figure is anywhere between 40 to 4,000 of such a big accident. We had another accident in 2011 in the Fukushima in Japan. And that meltdown was caused because of a tsunami. Now, how many deaths happened in that accident in 2011 in Japan? 0. Not a single death. But there was one reported death after 7 years of that accident that was attributed to the exposure, to some radiation exposure. And there has been some other nuclear accidents in the past in US, such as Three Mile Island near Pennsylvania. Again, in that accident, there was no casualty. So even though we have some big major accidents, the human life lost is in thousands, not in millions. Now compare that with the loss of human life every year because of fossil fuel. Every year, because of the air pollution, which is caused mostly by the uses of fossil fuel, we lose about 8 to 9 million people every year. Every year. And all the nuclear deaths that has been caused by nuclear power in the last 50, 60 years, not even in 100,000s. So that's the scale. And yet, the image of nuclear power is such that it is very dangerous. The total death caused by uses of fossil fuel, let's say the total death caused by the power generated by coal every year, for every 1 terawatt hour of energy produced by coal-based plant, there are roughly 60,000 people die every year. For every terawatt of energy produced by oil, about 18 to 19,000 people die. And that data for gas-based power is like 2,500. And for biomass-based power sources, it's about 4,500. Now compare that with the renewables and the nuclear. If you combine all the renewable sources and the nuclear power, the total death caused by these sources of energy for producing 1 terawatt hour of energy is 150. Now compare that 150 with 50,000 or 60,000 that's caused by coal-based plant. When there is no comparison on percentage wise, it's next to nothing, close to 0%. And even in that 150 deaths that is caused annually per terawatt hour of energy, only 70 deaths can be attributed to nuclear energy. So when we say that it is dangerous, I don't think it is as dangerous as fossil fuel. So that logic does not hold water, at least to me. The next point that the opponents of nuclear energy say is there is always a risk of nuclear bomb. People can misuse this technology to build nuclear bomb, nuclear missiles. There will be nuclear proliferation. Many countries who are going to use nuclear power plant, they can build plutonium through the uranium-238, and they can use that stock of plutonium for building bombs. And I think there's a valid point, there's a valid argument that is a threat. But that does not mean that we cannot mitigate it. I think if we all decide that we have to use nuclear energy, then at the global level, at the policy level, maybe at the UN level, we have a body like International Atomic Energy Agency, which can monitor these countries who are using nuclear power. We all should agree that we will give access to them so that they can inspect these nuclear plants every 6 months or every year, or as and when they require it. The third point that they raise is on the health and safety ground, which is nuclear power needs uranium, and the mining of uranium causes severe lung cancer. And that is true. There was a research done in 2000 when they looked into all the people who were involved in uranium mining since 1950 to 2000. Of all those people, there were around 405 deaths caused by lung cancer, which they said is like roughly 10% of the uranium miners died because of lung cancer. Instead, what should be done is, as we progress in future, maybe there will be new technologies where the need for human being to go inside the nuclear mines would be reduced. Maybe there would still be need for few people, but not as many as has been used historically. Maybe we would be using more robots, more automated vehicles, more automated extractors. I'm not saying that technology is available today, but if we invest enough money and time, we can develop such technologies. The fourth point is more financial, and that is nuclear technology is very expensive, and that is actually very true. It is expensive. To build one nuclear plant, an average nuclear plant, it costs $10 to $12 billion. The Hinkley Power Project, which was conceived around 2008 or 9 in UK, the cost overrun because of the delay has reached to $32 billion. So I'm not saying that they are not that they are very cheap. They are expensive. But again, we can do something to reduce that cost. And that can happen only if there's a mass level use of nuclear power. As we scale up, as every country is using nuclear energy, there will be technology which would help us to reduce the cost. There's a matrix in the power sector which compares the cost of producing power among different sources, which is called levelized cost of electricity or levelized cost of energy, which is nothing but basically says how much it costs to generate 1 unit of energy. So for nuclear, that number is roughly $150 for every megawatt hour of energy produced. The same LCOE is around $43 per megawatt hour of energy for wind and $41 per megawatt of energy produced by solar. So yes, it is expensive, but then if we scale up the energy and if we spend enough time on finding innovative solutions, that cost can come down. And there's actually another policy level reason which is making this cost go so high. In the 70s and 80s, there were environmental groups which were lobbying against the government to decommission all the existing nuclear power plants on the ground that they are dangerous. And the government, especially in the US, what they did, they came up with a lot of regulations and a lot of safeguarding features which caused the cost to triple or quadruple. The fifth point is nuclear energy takes a lot of time to build from conception to operations, and that is true. But again, that is not because nuclear energy takes time to build. It is because we have so much of regulation and paperwork from conception to final operation that there is a chance that it will get delayed. For example, if I have to build a nuclear power plant, I have to first decide the site where I'm going to build. Then I have to take permission to buy that land. That itself takes time to buy the land or lease it. Then you have to get a site permit for construction. Then you start building it, which will take maybe 5 to 7 years to build it. and more actually. Once you have built the plant in place, then you have to get a permit, and then you have to build a transmission line, and in between you have to obtain power purchase agreement with government or other private bodies. So all this takes time, and we can, if we really want to, reduce that time scale from 10 years, 15 years to maybe 5 or 7 years. But that can happen only if we decide, if we choose that yes, nuclear is also one of the options. The sixth point is nuclear energy is expensive not just to build, but also to manage the waste product from nuclear energy is very expensive. They have to be stored very, very carefully in a very secure place. And in United States itself, currently they're spending about $500 million every year to manage their waste products from roughly 100 nuclear reactors. And as globally this number of nuclear reactor increases, that cost is going to increase even further. And that's a point which I totally agree, that it is very expensive, and it is expensive not because it has to be very secure. It has to be very secure for a very, very long time. These waste need to be managed for next 1,000 years or maybe 100,000 years, because it takes a lot of time for them to decompose or to decay. Until then, you have to manage it, and which means you have to spend money on it. Again, my point would be, yes, currently these are expensive, but if we put our mind collectively, we can devise a method which would help us reduce this cost of storage of these nuclear waste. I mean, there was a program in United States, if I remember correctly, where they were planning to take all this nuclear waste and dump it in the sun. Now that sounds very ludicrous, and I think for that reason they dropped that idea. But my point is, we have to think about it, how best to manage it, and we will find a solution. And the last point, which is a bit controversial according to me, is many people say that nuclear energy produces more carbon emission than renewable energy. I mean, they are claiming that for every kilowatt hour of energy, nuclear energy over from start to end produces about 150 grams of carbon dioxide for every unit of power produced. Whereas renewables like solar and wind, they produce in the range of 40 to 50 grams of carbon dioxide. Now that data is from the people who are opposing nuclear energy. But when I looked at the same data from IPCC, they are saying that actually the carbon dioxide produced directly or indirectly from nuclear energy is only about 12 grams per unit of energy produced, which is comparable to the CO2 emission from wind and solar. So for that reason, I think it's controversial. You have to pick one of the numbers. I'm not saying one is wrong and the other is right, but my point is, all of these reasons can be successfully solved, can be mitigated, and we should be focusing not just on renewable like wind or only on solar. We should be taking whatever technology is available right now, and we should try to improve it and use it. I mean, some countries like New Zealand or Norway, they have ample amount of hydropower, so they should not be thinking about using nuclear energy. They can just rely on renewables and fulfill all their power demand. But then many other countries, they are not as lucky as them, and they should take help of nuclear. What I'm trying to say is there is no just one solution which fits the need of every country. Every country has to design its own policy, and nuclear should be into their arsenal. Do you agree with whatever I have said? Even if you don't, then I would really love to see what you think about all this. And yeah, if you like this video, then please do share it among your friends. Thank you very much.